Finance and Performance Committee meeting for today. Let's all stand for the karakia. Takate ho, ki te tonga. Takate ho, ki te tonga. Whoops. Kia mā, kina kina ki uta. Kia mā tara tara kitai. E hi aki ana te atakura. E tiho, he hoka, e hauhu. Tihe, ngāri ora. Thank you. Right, so we have apologies from Mayor Major, Councillor McDonald, Councillor Moore. We have Councillor Goff on Zoom, and Councillor Harrison Hunt has put an apology for lateness. Got there? Cool. Yeah, moved by Pauline and seconded by Tim. All those in favour say aye. Great. We've got a number of declarations of interest. Councillors Henstock and McClellan, item 8, CNZ. Councillors Scandra and Barber, item 8, BO. Councillors Goff and Peters, item 8, Trans Waste. Councillor Templeton for item 9 with CCHL. Councillor Templeton also for the PX item 12 as well, related to CCHL. And Councillor Scandra and Barber for item 12 for VO. Do we need to move those? No. Okay. And, right, confirming previous minutes, item 3. Someone like to move that? Councillor Peters. Seconded, Councillor McClellan. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. We've got no public forum, deputations or petitions today. And then we move into first staff report, item 7, the Te Kaha project. So we're going to let the members update. So welcome to the table.
Tēnā koutou katoa. My name is David Kennedy. I'm the Chief Executive of Te Kaha Project Delivery Limited. Thank you for taking time to review our report today. The report is in front of you and it's up on the screen. I don't propose to read through the whole report, but I will give you a couple of highlights from it. And we've got the latest bit of video footage or drone footage, which we'll put up on the screen and show you, which will probably be a lot more entertaining than listening to my monotone. I guess the most important things to comment on at the outset are that, as I say in the report, there are no issues that Council needs to be aware of on the project. Work continues to run on budget and on program. Program is challenging. Over the next 12 months is the period of time when the roof construction, which has just commenced, occurs, and so that's a very important part of the project, very delicate despite the substantial nature of the structure, and is very much an important part of the program and getting it complete. Having said that, I reconfirm that we are on program. The project team, the B6 Watpac people are working very hard to manage the ebbs and flows of activity on the site, and it's just really drawing your attention to the fact that we are at a the challenging time of the project, but we remain comfortable. The project team and our board retain control over our project contingency, managing the risks that the council is responsible for, and we remain at this point quite comfortable that we will come in within the budget and within the allowance of the project contingency, not needing to tap into the additional $10 million contingency which sits with the council. In terms of progress, we've got, and I apologise for the acronyms and the terminology here, 21 radial trusses have been erected. They're the large steel kind of vertical columns that are around the outside of the structure, and they hold the roof in place. So there's 18 of those, and there's 6 of the radial diaphragm modules, which are the parts that fit in between those vertical trusses in place. And so you can really see taking shape the outside of the building. Another wonderful milestone which has just occurred is that the final staged building consent has been approved by council, and that's for the architectural and facade treatment, and the contractor is very pleased to have been able to have that passed through the council. Just in terms of other impacts, in the last paragraph of the report, we've got 76% of the consultants and subcontractors and contractors engaged from within the South Island. 90% of the workers inducted to site are from the South Island. We've got over 8% of working hours to date by Māori and Pacifica, and these are all targets that we've established with B6 WAPAC for them to achieve, and they're exceeding those targets. We have now received the final sustainability report from B6 WAPAC, which which we've reviewed and we're comfortable with, but we've got to put it through our board to make sure they're happy with it, and then it'll be available for distribution to the council and the public or anybody who's interested. Those are really the main highlights that I wanted to draw your attention to. It might be worthwhile if we now play the video, which is a drone flight around the site, which they do every couple of weeks, or our consultants do every couple of weeks, and that will give you a much better idea of what's going on. And then if there's any questions that need clarification, I'm happy to deal with that. No verbal with this. No. Okay, so this is the end just by the cardboard cathedral or temporary cathedral. So working down the western side of the site from the north. So you can see all the seating plats are, concrete seating plats are in place on the eastern side of the building. You will note that not many other contractors in Christchurch have got cranes available to them. And here you get a better picture of the vertical radial trusses. I think there's another one going up today, which sort of make it 22 up out of the 40. Yeah. The platforms that have been built on the southern terraces there hold
boom lifts.
Lifts, yeah, boom lifts. So there's, at the end of those sort of telescope or snorkel things, there's a person in a little cage doing the welding of the parts at the top there. When I go and watch them doing that, it always makes me very glad that I have an office job. You can see some of the connections there between the trusses going in. So that's the beginning of the roof structure. So that's now down to the southwestern corner of the site. Southeastern corner of the site. Then heading north up the eastern side. You can also see on the ground within the area there on the field of play substantial bits of steel, or numbers of bits of steel, and also just gone out of screen but will come back into screen shot shortly. At the northern end, adjoining the boundary to the cathedral, a lot of the steel there, which has been delivered to site, but because the pieces are so large, they have to be put together on site and then lifted into place by crane. I think we've got round numbers about 280 workers on site at present. And within the under croft areas, both on the particularly on the western side, various fit out works are being undertaken as well. So wall linings and services and stuff are being put in through there.
Great. Thank you. That's great. Right, we've got questions. So Councillor Templeton.
Thanks so much for that, and looking forward to seeing the sustainability report. I just the old stadium, not Lancaster Park, had a couple of different gradients for the seatings, those kind of things. So the newest of the stands, the latest of the stands there, the top section was really quite steep, and some people found it quite steep. This looks quite steep too, to try and fit everything in. How steep is it compared with the old one?
I'm not sure how steep it is compared to the old one because I wasn't a regular attendee at the old one.
It will be a lot steeper than the old stand. It really is to get the seating in on the site. It's a big site, but when you actually take the field of play out of it, you've got a limited size that you can actually go, and the wider you actually go, and the more the less slope you have on the seating, the greater the cost because
of the roof structure.
You've got a bigger footprint, you've got a bigger roof to actually cover. So,
Is there a way for us to find or get some drawings or something which show the sort of steepness of the site at some point, the steepness of the seating?
Yep, we definitely have plans showing that.
Yeah. So I know that some people might find that difficult.
Yep.
So it'd be good to have an idea of that, even people without wheelchairs, and just that whole access and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks.
The advantage, of course, is it makes you feel a lot closer to the play.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Would you be able to take that as an action to pass that on? Great, thank you. So we've got Councillor Hanson.
Thank you. Thanks for the report. I was just interested in several questions, but the first is, when is the cultural narrative or the cultural design going to be made public?
We would hope to have that available within the next month.
Right. Is it sort of, we've kind of been hearing that every kind of time we're getting an update. Is everything looking good for that in terms of budget and being able to implement?
Yes.
Okay. The second question is, it's really good that you're highlighting the use of the local workforce. I'm just mindful that there was a number of Australian companies that set up sort of New Zealand branches and then would be possibly classified as local, even though they were actually Australian. And obviously we had one of those that collapsed. So I'm just wondering, do you have a sense of the spend that's been going into local companies staying in New Zealand versus the spend that's going offshore? Is there a better way that we can understand who's doing what rather than just having these sort of, I guess, New Zealand shelf companies set up for the big Australian companies?
Yeah, I mean, we can look at that. If the company is registered and based in New Zealand and it employs Kiwis, then we'd call it a New Zealand company. But whoever owns it, because a lot of companies are owned by overseas entities, so it's probably difficult to split all of that out accurately.
Right. Okay. And just the final question from me is just around, most of the design has already been complete, so the opportunities, I mean, I guess I'm just concerned that we still don't seem to have any sense of what are the event day activities that are going to raise revenue to help offset the costs. And I know we heard from Venues Otutahi there was some interest in having some sort of hospitality, for example. But in terms of the design, we don't really seem to have any visibility of what those locations will be, what those activities will be, how they'll interact with the...
Yeah, my understanding is that Venues Otutahi are developing a plan for non-event day activities.
Right.
And so they're probably better placed to answer that than we are.
I guess the question, though, is in terms of the design and the build...
The design is fixed.
Everything is in place now, so there's very limited opportunity to do anything additional.
Additional to what's in the design, correct, yes.
Right. And does that include the balance of the precinct, or is there a separate process underway to look at
I don't think these guys can answer this question. It's for VO. It's not for these guys. These guys building it. They're not actually running it and filling it.
Sorry, if I could just finish the question, because it is relevant to the people that are doing the construction work. I was just trying to understand if there was any other work that was being done in terms of the construction on the balance of precinct. That was all. So
no, nothing.
Right. Okay.
Nothing additional. No.
Okay. Thanks.
Right, thank you. Councillor Keown.
Thank you. And there are a number of spaces the VO board would all know within there that they are looking to fill that are big blank canvases. So that's that's the question you're looking to be answered. So we'll if we give Carolyn a heads up, she can answer that. And on Sarah's one on the gradient. It'll be good to get comparison to other stadia around the world. I visited the Sphere just after it opened, and that's unreal. It's you feel like you're almost on top of the other people. So it'll be good to get comparison of gradients around the world. So when we, okay. And then my question is, because there's a rumour that came back to me, which didn't make sense, because I know it's not true, but if you might be able to explain the technical side of it. Where you see all the steel gone up, the mainframe steel, that's white, it's pre-painted and gone up, and then those other bits have gone in, the rumour is that they're too short. And so those other bits have been put in. So if you can explain here in the public domain why those other bits are not painted when they go up.
They're
Press won't cover it, but they are here.
I'll get corrected if I'm wrong.
That's
I'm sure from Mark and Kent to my right. But the bits that aren't white are temporary propping pieces of steel. So they're there temporarily to hold things together until the next pieces are included.
Okay, so that's all of what you're seeing. So including on the big wide pipes that are so then other bits go in and replace those. So when do they get replaced? Because
and it's
So
really
sequentially as they go around the building, basically.
it's really to hold the steel in place as they're doing it, but also to brace the steel until the construction sort of progresses along. So
So the whole sort of structure and roof acts sort of as a diaphragm.
okay, I
And
think
so
you've just
you
added
kind
to
of
the
need
rumour.
it all attached
Can
to
we
each
bring
other.
up the image? An image of the steel, just like, because I know the bits you mean. There are bracing pieces, but in the main welding parts that people are, because you don't normally weld something in and then take that out. You might bolt it in.
Yeah, the what they call temporary works
Yep.
are a significant part of the engineering design of the structure to just like hold all the pieces of the Meccano set in place
Yep.
while they put the final structural bits into place.
Right. Okay. So all those dark bits up top and around that,
Yeah, they're temporary.
all temporary. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a toughie. Councillor Henstock.
Sorry to dwell on the gradient issue, but can I just return to that? Recognising that there's 3 different tiers of seating, is the gradient the same across all the different tiers, or is it steeper in the top?
steeper in I think the gradient is here.
Yeah.
So
We
that-
just have to check the plans, but
Yeah, because if the concern is around accessibility for people, there may be parts of the stadium that are not as steep and easier to access. So I was just seeking some clarification on that.
Yeah. Correct, yeah.
Great. Okay. Any other questions? No. So Councillor Keown can move the report, and Councillor Henstock second that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? It's carried. So now item 8, the final.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's the final statements of intent for CNZ, VO, LGFA and Trans Waste Canterbury. Did you want to say anything or just answer questions?
Yeah, just ask questions. I'd take it as read.
Yep. Great. Does anyone have any questions? Perfect. All right. Well, I'll happy to move those. Well, you said you would. Yeah. We'll get Councillor Harrison Hunt to second that. All those in favour? Do you want debate?
Thank you.
Yeah. No. All those in favour say aye. Against? It's carried. Right. Now we're moving on to item 9 CCHL, the final statement of intent, and we have Brian Pearson and Paul Silk here, and you wouldn't normally come to our meeting for this part, but I think there will be some questions eventually for that.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Morning.
Did you want to say anything, or should we just move into any questions that there might be?
I think we'll take the SOI as read and take any questions.
Perfect. Right.
That's okay.
Yeah, great. Is there anyone that does have questions? Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the work that you've done to get to this point. I was just interested in on page 143 of our report. So, sorry, I don't have page 13 of the statement of intent. It talks about the potential acquisition or divestment of assets and investments. Given that we've made a decision not to sell our public strategic assets, I'm just interested if there's any work going on with each of the companies to look at any sort of divestment of their operational services or bringing other partners on board. Are we aware of any? Are we aware of what the companies are doing in that regard? Are they doing anything, or have they kind of got the message that we're not keen to sell?
I think everyone's got a very clear message that we're proceeding with a mandate where we are retaining ownership of the existing assets within the portfolio.
Right. So there's no work being done behind the scenes that we're not aware of around any potential divestment of operations or leasing or anything like that?
Well, it depends where you draw the line. There are some elements of entering into leases, which, for example, in the Christchurch International Airport's property portfolio is the normal course of their business.
Sure.
So there are things that they're doing that. In terms of work to change the nature of the businesses that they have, is there anything happening in that regard? No.
Does Councillor Johansson have any specific concerns?
I guess I was just, like we've seen, I guess, I mean, obviously it's been a bit of a rocky road since we made the decision.
Yeah.
And I guess I would just be, I would just hope that we would be kept informed if there were proposals or offers or discussions being held. And I just wanted to, check in terms of our statement of intent, because it is quite permissive in terms of the work that the companies can do. I guess I don't understand at what stage would we be advised or notified of that, given the discussions that we had pre the asset sales decision.
Yeah, no, look, it's a very reasonable question, and we've got a session next week with the chairs and CEs of all the subsidiaries to have that conversation in terms of what does implementation of the enhanced status quo or our continued evolution to being a more active owner of this group of companies mean, and what does our role look like, which reflects your expectations of us to take a more active role.
The final question from me is, I don't know whether it's for you or for staff, but I guess one of the things that I thought we were doing was looking at having a best of council family approach across our different companies. So having regular discussions and engagements around where the opportunities are. Mm-hmm. I was quite shocked, for example, when the airport brought in a private company to do the concessions when we've got Venues Otetahi doing similar things. So I'm just wondering if there is enough in the statement of intent, the final version, that brings the council companies together, working strategically together, rather than doing things in isolation of each other.
I think whether there's enough in the statement of intent or not, there's certainly from CCHL and the subsidiaries' perspective a much closer alignment and a commitment to work much more closely together as a portfolio in the best interests of the city.
Look, and the updated statement of enduring expectations is very clear that the threshold to improving communication, improving engagement, and providing more timely information is low, and that's the expectation that we've passed on to the subsidiaries as well.
And that's going to be a work in progress. It is a work in progress because we're changing some sort of customary practice, and we're looking to ensure that there's a very low bar for no surprises.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Harrison-Hunt.
Kia ora, guys.
Kia ora.
I've just got a question around 3.4, which is on page 128 of our agenda. It has the table around the dividend forecasts, which has 55, 65 and 65 for the final SOI, but for the draft it was significantly lower. I note that you have a readjustment of your debt repayment profile as part of that. So just personally, it seems quite high. the dividends, the payback seems quite high in regards to what the capital injection is needed for the other companies. Is this, just looking at the change, is this predominantly the readjustment of the debt profile and not anything else within the companies themselves in terms of offsetting return?
Short answer is yes. So what that table reflects is the request that you made of us to consider the forecasted payment of those higher dividends throughout the SOI period, and CCHL board has decided that we will seek to make those payments or those forecasts from within our own capacity. And so that is primarily through the deferral of debt repayment that we had planned to start this year, really, to accelerate that debt repayment piece. We haven't called on any of the subsidiaries to increase their dividends beyond what they had previously projected.
Okay. So can you just remind me of what the implications are of requesting, an extra 19 million in 25 and an extra 11 in 26?
Well, it simply means our debt repayment the profile of our debt repayment is changed.
So it's pushed out, or is it?
It's pushed out.
Lower.
It's pushed out.
Okay.
But over the course of the 10 years, it has the effect of reducing the debt repayment from around 480 million to about 460 million, which is the carrying cost of the additional debt that we intended to repay, but we're now applying to dividends.
Okay, and what's the interest rate looking like at the moment in terms of repaying back that debt?
Yeah, well, and it's probably closer to 5 over that time period. But obviously, at this point in time, probably 65% of our debt portfolio is hedged. That's in line with our treasury policy.
Okay.
And then when we come to our forecasting process, we effectively use market interest rate forecasts to project what the debt servicing component will be through a 10-year period. So that is obviously subject to change as market interest rates change.
Okay. Last question, Madam Chair, is around the interest rates themselves. Are they projected to be coming down at any point?
Sorry, what was the question?
The interest in terms of the
interest
repayments?
rates.
Yes, well, they are, yeah. So basically, it doesn't matter with you look. You can start with the Reserve Bank's own forecasts, which are basically that the official cash rate will stay at around 5.5% for this year and then ease through 25. The market expectations are that the Reserve Bank will deliver rate cuts earlier than the first quarter of next year. So those expectations are being brought into the second half of 2024, and the ultimate path projected takes the cash rate down to 3.5% over a period of 2 years or so.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Just on that, because it was a question I had as well. We do have a discussion, aren't there, between staff and CCHL every annual and long-term plan about the dividends, isn't there? So if we wanted to think about adjusting that, it would be something that we could do.
These are forecasts for the SOI period, and then the projections beyond the SOI period for the balance of the 10-year LTP are projections, which is based on the best information we have at this time.
I suppose it's easier to come down than go up, I guess.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Councillor Cotter.
Look, Morena, nice to see you. My question was following on from Councillor Johansson's actually, and it was about the potential acquisition and divestments of assets. If the divestment is considered major, it comes to council for a decision. If it's considered material, the council is just informed. So my question is, where is the trigger between the two? And it might be quite a complex answer that you might not be able to answer today, but if you could maybe provide us some information on what actually triggers a major from a material. So in other words, which decision would come to council and which would sit with CCHL?
Yeah, the Companies Act is pretty clear. Well, not even pretty clear. It's very clear on what a major transaction is. So the greater interest is what is material. And again, if I look at the language that you've provided to us in the Statement of Enduring Expectations, it has set a very low threshold in terms of council's desire to have visibility and be informed of anything that may have a material impact, including on council's reputation.
Okay.
So that is a threshold that we're very conscious of.
Okay, yeah.
And as I said, what we're doing is we're developing a responsible investment framework, which is something that you've asked us to do in the letter of expectations as well, and we'll be scheduling a workshop where we'll come through and discuss these matters in detail with you.
Yeah, and I think that's the answer we're probably looking for. There's a very low threshold.
Yeah, the bottom line is we don't want to get any surprises from the subsidiaries, and we don't want you to get any surprises from us.
And we don't want to be surprised. Thank you. Great answer.
Councillor Fields.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
Good to see you. This is just a living wage question. So you'll know that council's been very keen to implement a living wage to its employees and contractors. Just wondering what your thoughts are and plans are around implementing living wage across all the like all the way through the kind of the subsidiaries, all the way through to contractors, and just to make sure that everybody who is involved in a subsidiary is entitled to a living wage.
Yeah, so obviously we're conscious that it's an expectation. As you'll recall, the subsidiary companies all achieved that at the end of 2022, I think it was. There was just some last residual 6 or 7 contracts, I think, within City Care in late 22 that needed to be resolved, and all the subsidiaries have maintained that since that period. The question of extending that to regular and ongoing suppliers and contractors is a requirement we have. What requirement we have of the subsidiaries is that they continue to demonstrate progress on that. Last year was particularly challenging because we had the surprise kind of 10% increase in the living wage, which no business has really budgeted for. So we've given everyone a bit of leeway to work out how they accommodate that, because there's a whole lot of other wage relativities which got impacted by that increase, which don't just impact our businesses, but obviously all our suppliers as well. And last year, actually, what we did was, from a pay equity point of view, which is the broader issue that we're looking at, is spent most of our time resourcing the gender pay research, which we've just received our draft report on. So that was our bigger priority last year. So we're broadly compliant. There are some elements of things that have changed in the last 2 years. The previous government brought in an apprenticeship scheme, so we've got some people that are on apprenticeship schemes that don't get paid the living wage. There's some youth work experience programs where people don't get paid the living wage. But those are very, very minor exceptions in the context of our direct employees.
No, thank you. That's a very comprehensive answer. I appreciate that, and I appreciate that it is quite complex and you don't really know what's around the corner. Yes.
Just on that, have you looked into accreditation, I guess, for each of the subsidiaries?
We haven't specifically required it, so the Enduring Expectations asks the subsidiaries to consider it. So the question of accreditation, whether it's on employment conditions or health and safety conditions or other things, is really a matter for the individual subsidiaries. If the individual subsidiaries see that there is value that accrues from accreditation, I'm sure that they would pursue it. I think the reality, and this is kind of me spitballing a bit off the top of my head, is if I look at the nature of employees and contractors, particularly in the trade sector, so most of this living wage conversation really comes back to City Care, Eco Central. They would all now be above the living wage. I would be surprised if there's any issues potentially outside of cleaners where that is an issue, and generally with the cleaning contracts there is a requirement that they be paid the living wage. So again, I would expect that we'd be compliant from that point of view. So again, that accreditation issue is one we leave to the subsidiaries.
Okay. Councillor Henson, I saw your hand up.
Sorry, yeah, I'm just picking up on the Deputy Mayor's point. I guess the reason why I was also interested in what was happening around that investment, divestment policy was, I'd also hate for the companies to spend a lot of money doing something, engaging with very expensive consultants to try and have something happen that we weren't aware of. You know what I mean? Like
we're very mindful.
It's kind of one of the
that
lessons
yeah.
I think we should learn from that whole business case fiasco, is that a huge amount of money can be spent and then when it gets to us, it might be a completely different view. So I guess I was interested in kind of what are the key gateways or milestones where we would have input. So that was, I guess, the reason for getting some clarity on that as well, rather than just being told at the end of the process.
We're very mindful of that, and mindful of the need for increased engagement with the subsidiaries by us and with CCHL, with council, and also the subsidiaries and ourselves with council joined up and together. So I think it's the increased engagement. It's forecasting when we might be needing to consider some significant decisions and ensuring that we're working towards that in a way which means there's a common understanding of the matters that we're going to need to be discussing well in advance of getting anywhere near a decision or anywhere near a substantive program of work.
Okay, thanks. And just I just have one question around, like, if a company like the airport was doing a revised vision or something, there's been some stuff in the media about them changing
the master
plan. Do we get any input into that, or because I don't think we've had any discussion with us about where those priorities are, how that process looks?
We're meeting with the Paul and I are meeting with the airport next week, and that's on our agenda as well. We understand that the master plan is going to be reviewed over the next 12 months, and there's an extensive stakeholder engagement program.
Right.
So we're keen to know where we and you fit into that.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Barber.
Thank you, gentlemen. Just curious, I see over the next 3 years that our total group debt is increasing by $300 million. With the current value of the assets, I think about 5 or 6 billion. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. When does
6 than 5?
More 6 than 5? Yeah. Can you give us any context around the percentage of debt to value ratio, say in 3 years? I mean, obviously you're clear on what the debt will be. How hard is it to predict the ratio to the value of the asset, and when would that ever get to a situation where we would be in some form of difficulty in terms of our relationship with debt?
Yeah, so we are just in the process of doing a capital structure review of the group, and so that's looking at we look at it from a gearing point of view, which is how much debt do you have relative to the equity base at a group level, at a parent company level. So we've talked about the fact that in the past that CCHL, we don't generate any revenue, we don't sell anything, we don't trade with anybody, we don't provide services outside of that to the ratepayers of Christchurch that we get paid for. So we receive dividends at the end of each year, and we have to service our debt from that. So we're looking at what the right level of debt, what the optimal structure at a parent level is, and then at a subsidiary level. The subsidiaries obviously are revenue generators, for-profit entities, so they have capacity to carry debt. It varies across the businesses depending on how much of their income is regulated income and how much of it is exposed to sort of domestic demand, normal domestic activity. By and large, our subsidiaries at the moment have what we would consider to be appropriate gearing ratios. The increases that you are talking to are primarily a function of Orion's investment in expanding the network. That's where the biggest growth in debt and the biggest growth in the value of our assets will occur over the next 10 years. And so Orion's gearing will move from what is a very conservative level at the moment to something that is more aggressive. And ultimately, as the owner of that asset, we do stand behind that. But again, given it's a regulated asset, where the regulator not only has a view on what your return on capital will be, but what an appropriate expansion of the network looks like, there are a lot of eyes that go over whether that is appropriate or not. In terms of those that are exposed to domestic demand, we obviously we apply a harder line to what an appropriate level of debt would look like for those businesses.
And just a little follow-up question. If there was a business of a similar size to ours that had that sort of debt to asset ratio. Is that common in the corporate?
So
world?
we benchmark all the subsidiaries against their peers. Yes.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Councillor McClellan.
Mine was actually the one you asked before, but I'll ask another. In terms of what I'm hearing on the living wage topic is there's, by and large in practice, most people are getting paid that or more. There are a few exceptions, but also none of the businesses are accredited, and for some it would be difficult, and that flexibility, as you've illustrated, has been useful over the last year where the living wage has gone up by so much. But what I'm keen to understand is are there any businesses within the group that could easily seek accreditation? I'm thinking Orion, the airport, or Enable may have such a low percentage of their workers at that line that it may be no skin off their nose essentially to seek accreditation. So I mean, it's not a question for now, but just something to reflect on.
Look, I mean, I guess we can pick up this issue of considering the benefits of accreditation as part of the broader piece that we're doing around pay equity. Again, kind of for us, that's living wage is one component of that piece. The gender pay research is another component piece. What is reasonable executive remuneration is another piece of that particular puzzle. We could pick that up in that work program.
It might be worth considering, because my fear is that some of the subs may simply not like the idea of living wage and therefore not want to seek accreditation. So I'd like to challenge that.
There's no sense of that.
No, the biggest digestion issue, we've talked about this previously, was always going to be city care, but they have a national remuneration framework, and the living wage is the entry point into that framework now. So,
cool, thanks.
I had a question which has disappeared on the screen. So it was just under the social relationships part of the SOI. It talks, there's the health and safety aspect right at the top there, and talks about effective, clear and well understood safety plan for the whole organisation. So that's meaning CCHL and all the subsidiaries. Is that correct?
Yes. So obviously, as part of our quarterly reporting, we report back to you on those metrics that are on the right-hand side.
Yeah. Because just, what we've been discussing recently around health and safety, especially around the port, and just making sure, I guess, that all people that work there, I guess, really understand what the processes are and have their questions and things answered, I guess. Yeah, it's something that is on our radar at the moment. Yeah.
No, we understand why it would be. Paul and I have spent a lot of time with the chair and chief executive of the port in recent weeks, and we have confidence in the intent and motivation around some of the change that's been worked through at the port.
Yeah.
And certainly have confidence in their good employer intent and motivations. The changes that are being worked through at the moment at the port are very much relating to health and safety and security.
Yeah. Right, thank you.
I do think, though, that it would be advantageous, and we'd like to propose a separate session with some priority where the port and ourselves meet with you to talk through some of the efforts at the port, and given there has been some recent media, we think it would be helpful if we all got in the room and there was able to be a better common understanding of the current position and the way forward.
Great. Yeah, that would be good if we can organise it. Yep. And Councillor Keown.
Yeah, I've got a couple of broader questions around the intellectual social relationships, natural aspect of it. If you weren't owned by the council, how much of this would be here?
I'd say a reasonable chunk of it would still be there.
A reasonable chunk?
Yeah.
So that wouldn't really change what's directed by this table? Doesn't change it? Okay, that's interesting. So then on the like the continual improvement in operation health and safety. I know a handful of people that work in various companies within the airport, sorry, not the airport, within the umbrella, one of them being the airport, and the rules and that around health and safety and other aspects of their jobs, there's tons. So and lots of compliance, like lots of compliance, not just like lots. Which has a cost. How much lower are the accident rates at these companies versus everywhere else, given we're spending so much more money than most normal companies?
I'd have to come back to you on the.
It'd be good to see,
the
because
relative.
spending a fortune and having a whole lot of compliance and making the work environment really difficult for various people, it'd be good to know that that has a payoff.
I'm not sure that I'm be interested to know if we are spending substantially more than.
Well, you have officers that go around checking on other people, you know, with literally a clipboard, checking that, you know, measuring out the cones and how many bits of health and safety gear they're wearing, and whereas a normal plumber or a welder just goes in and does the job and gets out.
I mean, it's important as a good employer that we exercise our responsibilities under the Health and Safety at Work Act.
100%, but it's got to relate to measurable difference. Like, what would be even more alarming is if the accident rate was high and you're spending like 6 or 8, 10 times more than other companies. That's all. It would be good if it's measurable. When I was on health board, we, through A&E, once the country started spending billions extra on health and safety, there was no reduction in accidents. There was no reduction in workplace deaths. So you can spend as much as you want, but it doesn't mean anyone's any safer. Or it'd be good to see that measurable, because if also on the other side, if you have got a super low rate, it'll be good to celebrate that and say, well, actually, we do this, and these are the reasons. So, because it goes both ways.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we are conscious of is just testing what we currently report on, and making sure that the information that comes back to us and then to you is relevant and insightful. We get a lot of information, and a lot of information on health and safety space, and the different subs themselves can report on the same metrics in different ways. And it's quite difficult to kind of consolidate all that and try and bring back some meaningful insights into you. But obviously, as Brian's saying, I mean, at the end of the day, we're all about safe environments and a zero tolerance for anything that puts that at risk. You can have compliance regimes in place, but ultimately it's the culture of the organisation that determines whether there's events or not.
And it'd be nice to also survey staff, especially at the bottom end, that are most likely to have your accidents, and that to see whether that increases or reduces their productivity, whether they get to the point where they say, oh God, I have to put that on again, and then they don't clip the line, and then that's the day they have the accident because they're so overwhelmed by it. It'd be, I don't know if you're carrying out those, but it would be good to know. That's all. And the other one is, and I will raise it in the public domain, is suicide is always an issue in lots of organisations. 900 a year on average in New Zealand, so way higher than road accidents and things. If there's any programs on prevention within that, I know farming and stuff like that has done it. And I remember talking to the CE of City Care a few years ago, about, let's say 5 years ago, about it, and it was a real concern of theirs because they'd had a small run, which no CE likes. So it'll be nice to get an update on that at some point. If anyone, especially if one of them's doing exemplary work on it, good to know what that is and if it can be shared amongst others. Normally no one talks about it because it's contagious.
Okay.
Cool, thank you.
Noted, thanks.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thanks. So I was just a little bit concerned at trying to understand a little bit more about what we're doing around what's happening at LPC. We've got a media article that says the RMTU...
We've already been told, Yanni, we're going to talk about that and talk with the board, so I think...
So we're going to talk with the board. But I guess what I wanted to understand...
We're going to have a meeting together. So
in terms of statement of intent, like we have a big focus on health and safety in terms of people, but what measure do we have around looking at what's happening in regards to industrial relations?
as I said, we've spent a lot of time with the port. We've been out at the port a number of times, and we've had further conversations with the chief executive, with the chair and chief executive, with the chief executive and executive team, because of course we wanted to reassure ourselves and have confidence in the port's good employer intentions and motivations, and we have reassured ourselves on that front. But what we're suggesting is that it would be useful to get in the room with the LPC chair and chief executive, with Paul and I and council, and actually talk that through so that we've all got a common understanding of the issues that are playing out at the port.
Sorry, I understand that. We can meet with them and they'll tell us their perspective. I guess what I'm trying to understand in terms of the statement of intent, how can we have confidence? Like, is there a measure that we've got around industrial relations being good? Because that's ultimately in everyone's best interest when industrial relations are good rather than poor. Is how do we measure, like, separate to the board and the chair and the chief executive telling us what they're doing? How do we measure workplace relations? Do we have any specific measure around that, or is that something that we should be considering?
I'll have to go back and check their SOI in detail, but there is absolutely a strong commitment in their SOI to collaborative, constructive relationships at the port, including with unions. So as Brian said, we have had to satisfy ourselves recently of the issues that are at play, LPC's approach to those issues, and whether or not we feel like they're taking a reasonable approach or not. And we have satisfied ourselves.
So do you meet with the unions to get their perspective?
No.
Not directly, that's an operational matter, but the unions have in the past written to us if they feel sufficiently motivated to do so. We've had no direct contact from the unions in this particular instance.
Right. Okay, thanks.
We've got, yes, you can move, but we have an amendment on the table, so we may like the mover and seconder of that to move the whole together. So thank you for answering the questions. So we've got Amendment 3, if you can see that there. So it says notes in the next letter of expectations that CCHL ensures it considers seeking living wage accreditation, hence questions we've had, for all CCHL subsidiaries within 12 months of the acceptance of the statement of intent.
I'm happy to move the whole, Madam Chair,
And
if I can.
Yep, you're welcome to do that. And did you want to second that? So we've got, as we talked about earlier, did anyone have any? Yep.
Do we know any financial implications of that? I mean, is it zero or is it some?
At the moment, it's a consider. So I imagine that CCHL will be able to come back and talk with us about this if needed. It's a consider at the moment. So, yeah. So we can find out further information within the next 12 months.
Right, because
so
when my wife says to me, would you consider making tea tonight? I know what that means.
Yeah, so does my partner.
It means there's going to be rubbish tea.
Right, so we've got a mover and seconder there. Does anyone have any debate on this? Yes, Councillor Cotter.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank CCHL for supporting this council, and particularly by pivoting with your planned debt reduction and actually converting some of that into a dividend to enable us to reduce our rate increase this year by, I think it was, I can't remember, 2.4%, something like that, considerable amount. And so I think that we need to recognise that, and thank you for doing that. And also for stepping up with your engagement and fronting up and talking to us regularly like you said that you will. I think it's really, really helpful to form this relationship, and looking forward to having that meeting that we're going to have all together. And also just going back to that debt thing, remembering that actually CCHL also took on a lot of debt to help us with our earthquake recovery, around 400 million, which you're still paying off. So it's left you with challenges. We have to appreciate that and recognise that, but it's helped council and it's helped the people of Christchurch. So I think we need to recognise that and thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pauline. Councillor Hanson.
Yeah,
I mean, I too want to say thank you for the work that you've been doing. But I do want to just flag a concern. You know, within the space of 3 years, going back to October 2021, where we had the LPC executive and the unions coming together, signing a high performance agreement, high engagement charter, where everyone was really on the same page, everyone was constructive and looking forward to the future, to get to a situation what we've had expressed in the media in the last few days, where a union that represents 30% of the workforce at the port has voted a no confidence in the executive team. I think there's real concern at what's going on, and I think we as a council, as the owner of the port, need to take that seriously. And I think we do. It is incumbent on us to look at our statement of intent and to really understand what measures we have in place to monitor the industrial relations. When we have good industrial relations at our council companies, everyone benefits, right? When we have industrial action, everyone suffers. So the more we can do to get good industrial relations through our council companies, I think the better we will be as a city. And I am deeply troubled by what's happening at the port. And I look forward to us having the ability to look at what we can do to try and get to a better place. But, you know, I just urge councillors to consider what's happened in recent history. I went to the community meeting in Littleton where a number of the union reps attended last year with the port management, and people were really positive about the way they were working together. So even within a space of 12 months, we've got into a situation where people are raising serious concerns. And I appreciate there's two sides to every story, but I think we should be aware that things are not good, and we do need to look at what we can do in terms of our monitoring to try and improve it.
Right. Oh, sorry, we're in debate, so you can't speak to it. So it looks like the debate is finished. So we've moved and seconded. So all those in favour say aye. Anyone against? So that's carried. Thank you very much. So now we move into public excluded. For CCHL, Brian and Paul will stay for that agenda item.